Thank you for joining us. Today, we're excited to bring you a brand new show from the Onramp Media umbrella. Wake Up Call is a weekly show that will be streamed live on LinkedIn every Monday morning. To catch the premiere of each episode, follow Onramp's LinkedIn page and add Wake Up Call events to your calendar. After the live premiere on LinkedIn, we will distribute each episode across Onramp Media's podcast channels and YouTube page. Wake Up Call aims to educate financial professionals on the merits of the Bitcoin investment thesis, how this asset represents both a threat to legacy financial service businesses and an opportunity to differentiate oneself and retain and attract new clients. Hosted by Mark Connors, Onramp's head of global macro strategy, and Rich Kerr, Onramp's president of managed wealth, this show seeks to provide financial professionals the wake-up call they need, prompt them to have an open mind with respect to Bitcoin, rethink their prior assumptions, become more educated on the topic, and learn from others who are already farther down this path. Mark and Rich bring a combined 60-plus years of experience across traditional markets and financial services, and will share their unique perspectives in how their peers and colleagues can approach the realm of Bitcoin. Wake Up Call will feature guests from various backgrounds and industries who will also share their own journeys to Bitcoin and how others can get up to speed. Now, time for the show.
All right. Well, I think we're live, Mark. This week, we are joined on the wake-up call with Sandra Reed, who's the CEO of Lyons Wealth Management, and Corey Roun, who is the Senior Director of Derivatives Trading at Lyons Wealth Management. So we're delighted to have both of you joining Mark and I today. But, first, before we kind of dive in with you guys, we always like to just kind of recap of, the past week and some of the fun things that have been happening. And Mark, I think this is the first week that we haven't had on Wake Up Call something really monumental kind of unfold, whether it be the Japanese, unwind of the carry trade, or a change in a presidential candidate, or even an assassination attempt. I think we've always started off with something a little bit wild. This week we get a chance to just kind of reflect and breathe a little bit. So that's kind of nice.
Rich, it's almost like the risk gods know it's the second half of August. And they said, enough, man. No more, as you said, no more Godzilla in Tokyo, no more people on rooftops, no more Irish exits of presidential candidates. Let's just have an easy one where we can talk about, is it pork roll or Taylor ham if you're from New Jersey? Let's have some simple topics. And for this conversation, I think, we kind of eased into the lighter aspect of that, Rich, when we introduced that picture of the Turkish epistolary that went viral over the past week.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. In fact, I was kind of chuckling this morning because the first thing that I did is I opened up my LinkedIn feed and saw the picture of that gentleman just kind of staring down, and no get-ups, no pomp and circumstance, just a guy with his hand in his pocket and the gun going down, staring at his target. I thought that was pretty amazing, and for a 51-year-old to win a silver medal, I think it was pretty awesome. And so I enjoyed that.
It is, and as we look to to glean the insights from Corey and Sander, who have done their own investment Olympics. This guy Youssef, the backstory is pretty cool. He's a Turkish, and if you haven't seen it, just look up 10-meter pistol silver champion, and he's been in the Olympics since 2008. And Rich and I were talking before the call. I'm like, wait a minute. And we didn't, as I wrote a Substack on the guy because I think the story is so fascinating. And he's been in the Olympics since 2008. That's how long Bitcoin's been around. So this guy's been around that long. No one knew about him. Yet he has been operating at a level of what do you want to call it? Achievement, where he's relying on his own internal game, no contraption on his eye, no headphones, and he's just cranking. And in fact, he did win silver, not gold, but he's also got a little bit of cheek in him. He said to the Serbian team, yeah, I'm lending you the gold because in 4 years, I'm going to get it. So I wouldn't want that guy chasing me, I'll tell you, for 4 years. I wouldn't sleep very well. So we'll open up to you guys about how this dude played the long game. He's more than twice the age of his 24-year-old shooting partner, 10 to 12 years older than the gold medal team, and yet he's bringing it. So on that note, how does Bitcoin and Lyons wealth fit into that playing the long game?
Well, I mean, Corey can talk more about the time frame as far as he's been following crypto and Bitcoin. I mean, if that's when it started, that's when Corey got into it. And as I mentioned to you guys, he had a mining operation, and for whatever decade it was, we especially when crypto was kind of more hot and new. I'm not sure which phase of the cycle it was, 4 or 5 years ago. Every single client conversation we had ended with, hey, can I ask you about Bitcoin, or can I ask you about crypto? So we actually had been trying to solve for, bringing that to our clients for a long time. And I'll let Corey tell his story. It's much more involved with crypto than mine, but it's not easy to explain to people over 35 in some cases, or 50, whatever number you want to pick. But yeah, I mean, we've been in it for the long game, and we finally had a window open. I mean, really a year and a half ago to bring a separately managed account to advisors and our clients that was at least a little bit easier to handle and less do-it-yourselfer than everything else. And Corey's like, I've been telling it for years to me. Then all of a sudden we're like the early birds, the first whatever you would call it, first like Gatorade, we're the first
movers,
ones. Yeah, first movers. That's it. So it's kind of like, and people are asking me questions like, listen, I don't know that much about crypto, but we're bringing a product that we think, advisors and clients that don't want to do the cold storage, the wallet, the tokens, want some help. And also, if you think about bringing crypto to the investment market as an asset class, most advisors want to keep it pretty simple. So we thought an index would be the best way to go. But as far as the ins and outs, Corey, you should tell your story about, like, I joke if Corey turned his camera around, he's got computer parts in his office, and I joke that he's like Sanford and Sons. He can fix computers, and he just walks by my computer and starts working better. So, but he's I guess a tinkerer. We're both from Maine, ironically, but so Corey can fix your car and your computer, but he also can do a crypto mining. So Corey, tell him your story.
Yeah, so I originally got into it around 2010, just trading Bitcoin. Didn't really know much about it at the time, just was kind of dabbling. Got out of it, just didn't really pay much attention. Got back in around 2012, and then slowly I started getting into mining, and in that group, it's like Discord, and you have all these different servers that you're on, and I ended up running a Discord group with another gentleman, and we grew it, pretty large, a couple thousand people, and we would just all discuss mining and how to fork a coin, and so we forked off Monero and made our own little coin for fun, and then just building out, learning the operational side of how to make this cryptocurrency work and be a business. So as soon as I kind of figured it all out, you're making money with the mining, and you have to constantly keep up with hardware and keep up with all the different coins, and mining different the crap coins basically, and then converting them, into Bitcoin or Ethereum. So that kind of, really jump-started my education into it, and the functionality of it, and the use cases that are there for cryptocurrency in general, more so blockchain, which leads us to, I started coming to work and saying, hey, we've got to get something going, because this is going to be the future. And we were really early. We didn't know how to do it. We started looking at the rules, and how can we even offer this as a manager? How can we because then it's like the clients start calling in and saying, how do I do this? Can you buy it for me? It's like, no, I can't buy it on your behalf yet. You've got to open a wallet. You've got to, all of the barriers to entry for, I hate to say unsophisticated, but just, in that section, you have to be pretty technically, you know, attuned to how all these wallets work and passwords that you can't ever lose, and where it goes on and on. So that barrier was huge, and we wanted to try to offer a product as soon as we could, which we ended up doing. And Sauter had some friends in the industry already, and we linked up with them, and that was CoinDesk. And then we went to their, we brought out our product with CoinDesk off the index that they've created. And with Bitcoin being the base layer of all of crypto, right? I mean, everything has originated from Bitcoin. So if you focus on 200, 300 different coins, it's just a lot. It waters it down, and it just keeps coming back to where do you want to be? You want to be in Bitcoin. So that's where we've focused, is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a few small ones. And that's what led us into the index, to give, to offer something. And obviously now you have spot ETFs, and where we are
Corey,
today.
why don't you frame the size of the market for people? Because you just mentioned crap coins, you mentioned entry points, and then you said you mentioned Bitcoin and Ethereum. Just give some
I
folks.
mean, the overall, the market cap is, I think we're approaching, what, $1 trillion market cap for everything combined.
Well, brilliant.
Something
I
crazy like that.
I think 2.2 trillion
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really not a small thing anymore like it once was.
hmm
It's been adopted, and now it's with BlackRock and the different ETFs that are out there. Um, it's becoming more of an everyday piece of a portfolio that most people have at any age, depending on their advisor and who they're with. But we've started people with a 5% allocation in our standard asset mix, and you're seeing that all around the world now, that you have to have this asset class in your portfolios. And I don't want to compare it straight to gold, but it acts somewhat like gold. Especially, we've seen with you brought up the politics earlier, where we haven't had anything happen in the last week, and it's been pretty stable. But based on any news that comes out, you have Bitcoin go up or down depending on the candidates. That one candidate wants to adopt it more, the others maybe not. So yeah, it's prevalent, and it's an everyday thing now. Even 2 years ago, it wasn't so much like this.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that I have found in my Bitcoin journey, which I'm not surrounded by a ton of Bitcoin people, to be honest with you, and that's not atypical, I would imagine. When I talk to other people that are in the Bitcoin space, but that being said, people are aware of Bitcoin, and I think over the last, when I first started kind of coming into a more serious awareness of Bitcoin, I would say it was really 2017. Um, and then I started doing my work in 2019. But the story was always the speculative growth nature of Bitcoin. And I find it absolutely fascinating that that's flipped a little bit in the last couple of years. People are being drawn to Bitcoin to the point that you just made, Corey, which is it's digital gold. That message is really starting to permeate in circles that I run with, and so people are asking questions about Bitcoin less because of the explosive growth that it's seen, but more so around the preservation of of assets, the store of value, capabilities of Bitcoin, the ability to, potentially, hedge away some of the inflationary risks and other risks that live inside of the market. And I'm curious, either Sander or Corey, what are you hearing, from your clients in your wealth management practice or prospective clients, and how they're trying to solve the puzzle?
Um, I mean, the way, I was core intellectually is way ahead of me and all of this for, it still is for a long time. But like one thing that one of the light bulb moments I had as far as that goes is, and I guess NFT would be your best example of it, but the blockchain kind of gives ownership to something on the internet. Like in other words, if you put in a video on the internet, it's gone, right? It's everybody owns it. So to me, what helped me understand like the concept is the coding of blockchain and then the coding of Bitcoin, you actually can own something. And so that kind of was a eureka moment for me. And I don't I don't think people necessarily understand Bitcoin or crypto any more than they did 5 years ago, but I think they do understand that they do need to have a portion of it in their portfolio. And everyone has the whole country club FOMO thing where the one young person or whatever that happens to buy it, like they drive a Ferrari and it's all because of crypto. And the older people are like, wait a minute, I want some of that. So I don't think the ownership or the understanding of crypto is that much better. But being able to deliver it to folks that are not necessarily do-it-yourself or investors has come a long way. And BlackRock especially, good or bad, has brought it to the forefront. I mean, I think they got 20 billion the first couple of weeks. It's kind of crazy, but anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. It's I think where we go forward is the differentiation between indexes and ETFs, or owning the outright coins, the direct ownership, still making that easier for people, and then making it easier for people to directly invest and to actively trade it versus just passively own it like in an ETF. So those are the two. I think that's kind of what's left over here in the business from a money manager point of view.
So Sander,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Corey. You got it.
I was going to say, one thing I've discussed with clients, as part of education is just history, right? If we go back to the gold rush, and you look back, it's like who got rich during that period, and it wasn't necessarily the people mining, it was the people selling the deeds and selling the equipment, and I think that's where you've seen an explosion just in the market in general, which happened years ago with AMD and Nvidia, even though they didn't exactly declare how much of their business was being supported by mining activities when Ethereum was proof of work instead of proof of stake. And it branches out, and you have many companies now, like MicroStrategy. You've got these companies that own large sums, Tesla and these different companies that now have this huge piece as a part of their assets and their businesses in general. So, for the people that still don't fully understand it, haven't fully adopted it, there's ways to arbitrarily own it out there. And that is a part of, and that breaks us into the AI thing too, and why some of these tech companies have moved as much as possible. But you are seeing that, and if you look historical, just at the gold rush and how that played out, it can kind of give you a little bit of a preview in a way to how this all will play out over time, especially when you have the Black Rocks and you have the big diggers come in, right? That are pulling out and owning. One of the things that's still gonna keep Bitcoin interesting is the hardcore crypto fans and people. The original allure to them was the decentralization, the not being tied to the government, not being tied and controlled by someone. So when you have these BlackRock ETF companies now that own majorities of what's even out there now with a finite coin, it's going to make things interesting in general, just on that side of it, with the hardcore crypto enthusiasts on how they're going to treat Bitcoin and Ethereum now. That's another aspect that I think people aren't really looking too much at because they're so excited that it's so obtainable now. But that brings us back into a centralized, uh,
Yeah.
aspect that people are trying to stay away from. So that's something I'm kind of looking at and seeing if that's going to stunt the growth of Bitcoin and Ethereum now. Not as attractive maybe because of that to some crowds, but then it's attractive to people that haven't been able to obtain it because of the difficulties of,
Mhm.
again, that barrier to entry.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting thread there, Corey, that you're pulling on. It's it's my belief, that ultimately everybody bends the knee, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's going to come into Bitcoin. You mentioned corporations, obviously nation states, with what's going on in El Salvador and other states that are, nation states that are considering Bitcoin. And then you have the major, asset management places, Fidelity, BlackRock, as a couple just off the top of my head. Um, it, I love the fact that they came to Bitcoin. I love it, right? Because what ultimately happens is you get people that get exposure to it. It's an easy button for advisors, but it's also an easy button for end clients to be able to get exposure. And to me, I think that that's a winning proposition no matter what. But ultimately, I think Bitcoin is such a curious asset. In the way that at least my exploration of it, and others that I've talked to, you have to go through staging of your learning. And I think the easy button with the ETFs is fantastic. But as people start to recognize, the monetary properties of Bitcoin, the scarcity aspects, the fact that ETFs, right, you don't own Bitcoin,
Yep.
you own shares. And BlackRock owns that Bitcoin, and they're all sitting on Coinbase, or well, what, 9 out of 11 of the ETF providers, and so it's really quite a fascinating story, and that opens up the other risks, right? Custodial risks and counterparty risks and things on that nature that people will start learning about and understanding. But my belief is this, and I'm curious of your thoughts on it, because you were kind of pulling on the thread. My belief is that it's an easy access. It's stage one. But as people start recognizing the growth potential or the store of value potential or the scarcity aspects or whatever it might be that intrigues them, they're going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole, and they're going to say, "What is this? Why is it behaving very differently in my portfolio than everything else?" And ultimately, they're going to say, "Wait a second, you know, I'd like to I'd like to own
Right.
that asset. I'd like to be the one to have the control of that asset, not delegate the control completely away to somebody else." And so, my belief is that, that's stage one, and stage two is learning, and stage three is further understanding of custodial implications and how do you secure a digital asset, and then ultimately, uh, you know, the end client makes a decision, to potentially, stage out of an ETF and into something that is more attractive to them and that is more empowering to them as an individual. And so, that being said, I think the registered investment advisor in particular, has a foundational role in creating those access points for those clients. Not everybody is looking for the easy button in how they control an asset. A lot of people are sophisticated enough or will educate themselves to get to a place of sophistication to say, I actually want this asset I see it as a long duration generational asset, and I want it for my family.
Yeah,
So I think that
and
there'll be this kind of conversion down the road. So to me, it's like access one, education two, conversion three.
Yeah, that's a great point, Rich, and that was so when Sandra and I finally figured out a way, to offer something to our clients. My big thing to him was the client has to own. They have to
Hmm.
have their own wallet. So that's something that we made possible for our clients where
Yeah.
they can actually custody their own wallet. If they want to pull it out, if they don't want to work with us anymore, they can pull it out and they can send it to whatever wallet they want, but they maintain the ownership of that wallet, and it's properly handled, stored, properly done by our partners. But that was one thing that we said we have to offer that because, at least from my background there in it, nobody would want it in the future, I thought. And when I discussed it with Sonder, he agreed. It's like you're saying, people that get educated, they're going to start realizing why it's important to own it yourself and not have someone else in control of it.
all
Well, it's
right,
also
Be-
like,
Beautiful.
Corey and Son, I'm going to jump in here, going right back to my man in the epistolary from Turkey about how he played the long game, and he had the skill that he kept basically inside. It didn't show. You guys saw the opportunity, which wasn't manifest, about owning it. You did the hard work. And Sandra, this is when I first met you. Andy Bear from CoinDesk introduced us. Awesome guy. I mentioned it because he's also a TradFi refugee, and he saw it.
right.
And you and Corey have done something that is still going to provide even more yield than what your fund, Sonder, is up over 100% since you guys kicked it off.
Yeah, I mean, little
I
luck
mean,
getting it.
any thank you notes, Christmas cards, or Hanukkah
Not
cards from
really.
people?
No, we
No.
got lucky there, and remember also, I mean, I agree with Core, but we also didn't really have a lot of. There was nowhere else to go. You either do spot futures or own the coin, and we set it up to own the coin. And the story that I tell that I think is kind of funny at that moment was, so again, I knew nothing about crypto. Corey knows everything about crypto. We go to this consensus and launch the index, and if you think of all these, really smart people that have either built their own coins or their own venture capital programs, whatever it might be. And we're at this conference, and if you and people were like, "Are you degen?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm pretty degenerate." Of course, of course. I didn't know what they meant. It's like, oh, you mean? Just kidding. So it's like when Darth Vader meets Luke in the tunnel, kind of thing. The young and the old is what they kind of are like. What are you guys doing? And it's like, well, if we're going to bring this to it, first of all, if you're going to make money as a crypto person, like you got to figure out a way to make money, and a lot of those roads lead back to asset management, right? Like how do we get crypto into portfolios? And so anyway, so we met these people that they've come. It's kind of like, how did Mark Zuckerberg finally monetize Facebook? Well, it wasn't free, friends and likes and pictures. He basically started selling people's privacy, right, or their information. So that's how he monetized Facebook. It's like, well, how am I going to monetize all this effort that I put into whatever it is I created in crypto? And the roads led back to how do we get these into people's portfolios so we can charge a fee, right? And how do we monetize crypto? And then here comes the old investment guy who knows that path. So it definitely, and at this point, owning the coins is the only way to go, because the only other way to go is ETF, right? So we own the raw coins, and I think that will have an advantage, and I think it'll also have an advantage to not being in the ETF. In that, right now, we don't know. So they launched all sorts of ETFs, like gold ETF, corn ETF. It's been done a million times, but no one's seen a crypto ETF, right? So what if there are problems? Like, what if they can't get the Bitcoin, or there's a computer glitch? So in a weird way, we're safer.
What if they oversell? They oversell more than is there.
Right. So there's, whereas we know if we own our coins, we're good. But what was interesting also at the time, which is I think a little bit opportunity lost for us, is if you think about everybody that can do it yourself in the crypto space, if they've done it, right? Like they open their own crypto account, the Coinbase, they own the crypto. So you get to people more my age. It's like, well, now I want to have in my IRA, like what I call advised business. And it's something Mark and I worked on, in a way, like discuss, like with the Canadian ETF, is how do we get this into advised money, which is 401k business, ERISA business, and just taxable accounts, IRAs, things like that. And that even now, I mean, Bitcoin solved for that. I don't know if you can put them in IRAs yet, but that's such a massive world of money that still really hasn't been accessed in a way with raw coins. Like, so we still have a raw coin advantage, I guess, but BlackRock certainly kind of destroyed some people's businesses because, if you can click and buy an ETF in your IRA account, it wipes that opportunity out.
And it is. And Sonder, I think you still do have an advantage. Like, if we think where Bitcoin's going, it's averaged 60% annualized over the last 10 years and still 50% over the last 5 years. And if it goes where we think it's going to go, back to what Connor was saying about owning, the value of the internet, which is a very different proposition. Owning the raw asset through wallets like you're doing preserves a value that's still incubating in this asset class. I mean, people are still calling it a Ponzi scheme. The tulip craze was 3.5 years. That's it. This thing's been around 15 years with 45 years of technology behind it. And the dot-com bubble, again, 3.5, 4 years. So that ship sailed. As we see, people are coming in. And the alpha, and I'm pumping up your own book here, but ours too. The alpha is really in owning it correctly, because if you allow your clients to own it, maybe they can borrow against it in a secure level 1 manner over time and never have to yield it. I'm not saying you can do it safely now, but the technology is evolving where you just don't know. And the last thing I'll say here on this is, Corey, I agree with you. The picks and shovels were sold early and often, not always to the benefit of the miner necessarily. Sam Bankman-Fried, at the forefront of that. But the difference is versus gold then versus this asset is, imagine if there was a gold rush right when Nixon broke the peg, because gold was only worth $1 then. But imagine if there was a gold rush when you have people forgiving debt, adding to, Janet Yellen saying, hey, listen, this is the same level of interest we've always paid. It's like, Janet, man, you're not reading the same financials we are. And so gold is up for a reason. So I think this is where it's a gold rush where, yes, people like you and I and Rich and Onramp, we're making sure people are smart, owning it correctly, but just own the asset, folks, because it's going to outstrip the dollar by a lot.
At Onramp, we believe that Bitcoin is the most important asset of the 21st century. The hard part is securing it right. There are shortcomings with keeping your coins on an exchange, but also with setting up your own self-custody arrangement. Onramp solves for these concerns. Our multi-institution custody solution maximizes security and minimizes counterparty risk, ensuring that your Bitcoin remains securely in your possession, and provides built-in inheritance planning to ensure your family is protected as well. Onramp provides peace of mind for your Bitcoin journey, whether for your whole stack or for part of it as a complement to your existing self-custody setup. For more information, check us out at onrampbitcoin.com.
I mean, the kind of, we talked about this before. I mean, I think the next sort of step for people like us, advisors, is if you can own now Bitcoin through an ETF, the problem is it fluctuates a lot. And, let's say you put grandma in at 60 and it let's say it goes to 20 temporarily, whatever it is. So I think sort of a tactical approach would be kind of the next type of concept we would roll out, just because it is very volatile. And if it's going to go into IRAs and 401k plans, I think that if there's a way to tamp in the volatility a little bit, that will be the value add in the business. I mean, if you can own it for 10 years, I think, Mark, you're totally right. Just sit on it and own it. But we've seen people bail out of volatile asset classes at usually the absolute worst time every time. So, if there's some sort of way to actively manage, because it looks like passive is taken now, that's kind of would be the next step for Lyons as far as an offering goes to folks because, we want to, and our index is not really, it has 5, coins in it, and it's rebalanced pretty frequently. So it's not necessarily passive, but I think a more proactive with defensive, perhaps, offering would be what we roll out next, for people that don't want to have it go from, to 60 to 10 and just have a reason to get out of it at some point and re-enter, of course, to get back in.
It's interesting. I've always been fascinated by Bitcoin cycles, right? You look at the epoch and each epoch it's got few up years, 3 up years, 1 down year, 3 up years, 1 down year, right? And so it really is an asset that you want to own for at least 5 years. But something that really resonated with me, and I can't recall off the top of my head, I just blanked, but somebody had said, Bitcoin is volatility is not a bug, it's a feature. And in many respects, I think this is where I think registered investment advisors in particular can really help clients understand this is an asset that you want to own, and when it gives you those opportunities, like the past week, right, when it dropped down to dropped under 50 for just a brief second, that's where you just want to go in and add more dollars to that asset and continue to change your basis in the positive. And so in my mind, I think it's helping clients understand the behavioral finance components of this, right? One, it's a very long duration asset. 2, it is something that is generational. 3, it gives you opportunities to enter, or if you're like Michael Saylor, I guess, he says, I'll just keep buying the top forever, because it's always going to go up, because of the scarcity components. But that being said, I think the beautiful thing is looking at the behavioral finance components of Bitcoin and thinking through, okay, well, what do we all want our clients to be? We want them to take emotion out of their investment decisions, right? We want them to have a low time preference and really look at the fundamentals and the quality of the asset that they're purchasing and how it fits into their overall portfolio. And so there's a lot of coaching, a lot of counseling that has to happen that brings our clients, our end clients along and helps them understand the nature of the asset. That's my kind of take, is that ultimately, there's a couple things you can do, right? You can trade the asset and have a developed strategy around it. Or you can have, a totally different conversation with your client and get them energized around the duration, long duration components.
And Rich,
of
when
Bitcoin
you and I
and get
decide
out
to
of the
have
bad behaviors.
when you and I decide to have Corey and Sonder on, to your point,
Yeah.
it's because they not only were early, but Sonder, you've been, and Corey, been having active strategies because the passive game is in the hands of the 2 basis point midgets over at the large asset managers. So back to your point about tactically trading, is there I agree, and we've talked a little bit about the evidence is there that you can rent Bitcoin and monetize the volatility like no one else, and we're going to have you back on for that white paper that we've done and that you've shown evidence on. Is there an analog in your experience about being able to string a tactically traded vehicle that clients were like, great, that's a great way to own technology, or a great way to own emerging markets or another asset class or debt?
Yeah, I mean, we after the crash of '08, we brought a tactical manager to market as a sub-advisor to us, and they ended up raising, I think $16 billion because they actually missed that they tactically exited the crash of '08. They were up, I think, +2 in '08. So, and we had clients with large stock positions that didn't want to hedge, so it was a pretty painful time for us. So the 2 ways to go about hedging is develop either momentum or some sort of relative strength, almost like an algorithm to get in and out. I'm not sure I want to do that. And then the other kind of strategy that we employ for one of our bigger programs we call yield is almost an always on cashless collar where we own the long position, but it's constantly collared. The CBOE has a product called CLL. It's the S&P, it's 95% put, 110 call, sold call bought put. Just because it is so volatile that as an advisor, what you don't want to have happen is you own an asset class, let's say 5% of your entire book, and it blows up and you lose clients because of that small asset class or that exposure. So, you can look pretty bad if let's say Bitcoin does go from 60 to 10, that puts your whole book at risk, even if you own it through an ETF. So, to come up with something that gives either always on defense or a momentum way out, to me, it's something that we're looking at. We talked to Coinbase about, or CoinDesk about, doing an index along those lines, like a trend following index. So I kind of wanted to let the BlackRock dust settle before we launch another product because it's time consuming. But now that that's kind of happened, I think we can kind of go back and look at a product like that.
Yeah, there's even more value to on at least on some advisors. If you look at standard just dividend reinvestment on a lot of different companies in the S&P, we've seen studies on, if you had bought a share of Walmart 30 years ago and just done dividend reinvestment, well, if you have an advisor that's forward thinking and doing things like we do, it's like, well, if you're scared to jump into the market and your portfolio is yielding 3% a year, just put the 3% into Bitcoin. Or, if you already have crypto assets, let them stake and dollar cost average in. And if you had a dollar cost averaged into Bitcoin over the last 10 years using, let's say, your S&P type portfolio that you've had yielded 2.5 to 3.5% over the years, and the last 10 years you put the 2.5, 3.5 just into Bitcoin in your portfolio, or pulled it out into a wallet, because guys like us are saying, hey, you should check this other asset class out and put a little of your money there. You almost have a free allocation into that volatile market without an advisor to tell you these things, though, and come up with these. That's just a simple strategy that we've discussed with people. Like, hey, you just want to kind of put your toes in the water, without even being tactical. You're just long-term strategic with that. And it's just not something that you're going to read in a forum or read on Reddit, or that's something where an advisor is going to say, look at these things historically, kind of like with the gold rush. You got to look at history and how things repeat themselves. And with the whole staking thing, you can a lot of different places let you stake your Ethereum and your Bitcoin. You dollar cost average in. If you had done that over the last 10 years, you're sitting pretty. But if no one tells you that, and you don't know you have those tools, that's where the value of an advisor comes in, because it's like, why do I need an advisor? I can buy it for free myself, or I can pay a nickel, per thousand to BlackRock. Well, these are some of the ways that an advisor can actually help you, better yourself and lower some of that volatility.
Yeah,
Corey,
no doubt about
full
it. Oh, I'm sorry, Mark. Just one thought, right? The reality, and I think you hit on it earlier, Corey, and Sander, you both kind of described, right? 90% of investors haven't really fully adopted, a cryptocurrency thesis. They haven't done the work. They don't know how to access it. Yeah, you can get an app, but is it a trustworthy app? And it's an intimidating process, I think, for a lot of people to enter. And I do think that advisors have a very meaningful role to play in saying, hey, wait a second, there is a way to do this. And I'd compliment you both, because you clearly took your fiduciary status, an extra step, right? You said, look, it's important that the end client has the fundamental ownership assurances. right? Whether they want to be our client or they don't want to be our client, they have the ability to offload and actually take custody of this in their own, segregated wallet. And the fact that you guys have recognized that and instilled that into the product that you have produced, that's really exceptional in my mind. And I think it's really important, for all advisors who are listening to the call today, to be thinking about the ownership assurances component. And you've heard my point of view on this, and I know that we all somewhat share this, which is that this is an asset you want to own. You want those ownership assurances, so you better be able to have a way to exit it. If I buy the ETF, I'm going to have in my trust account, and I ultimately want to take possession of my Bitcoin, well, I'm going to have a capital gain, most likely, that I'm going to have to take and then position myself into it. But if they own a productized solution in which the client has the ability to take in kind a distribution, then that's a non-taxable event. And obviously check with your accountant. There's my disclaimer. But that's a non-taxable event to be able to take that ownership of that asset, regardless of whether or not you want to maintain the relationship that you have that brought you into the product. And so I commend you guys for creating those offshoots, to be able to thinking through what is the right way to access this, and why is the Lyons CoinDesk large cap index product a solid product in order for people to enter into the solution. And we've done the same with Onramp and with our Bitcoin trust, is thinking through ownership assurances, custodial implications, and then ultimate what is in the best interest of our clients. And so I think we're of like mind there, and I just want to commend you guys for really thinking through the fiduciary components of it. I know we're kind of at time here. Any closing thoughts from the group? Yes, Sander?
Yeah, Rich, actually, a little light bulb went on, which is kind of funny because some of our clients are very organized and some are not. But one thing as a fiduciary is we have to have records of everything, right, for years. And so in a way, especially for someone that's like timid about having a wallet, maybe we have a client lose a password or they can't find the paperwork. Because we're so regulated, we have all that because we have to, but also as a service to our clients, if it's 3 years later and they can't find the password, we have it because we're required to have it. So it's, in a way, we're a good backup plan for that sort of raw ownership that you're talking about, in addition to Corey's expertise and with an index that has Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana. So it's sort of a solid index, and we have sort of a plan B backup in case our clients lose their password, which I'd like to say doesn't happen too often, but it actually happens a lot. So just the record keeping aspect of being an SEC registered investment advisor, is a nice backup plan for people that want to own crypto, is how I'd close.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I just want to thank our two guests once again, Sander Reed, who's the CEO of Lyons Wealth Management, and Corey Roun, Senior Director of Trading and Derivatives at Lyons Wealth Management. You guys are, really, and I know, we kind of joke about it, right? It's a 15-year track record, but you had the courage to kind of one, recognize the opportunity, two, to think through the fiduciary implications and all of the compliance and legal and all of these things that you had to go through. And you were early and rewarded for being early, I think. And here's the thing I would leave with any registered investment advisor or financial professional that might be listening in today. It's still early. It's still very early, and while yes, as we're sitting here recording live, Bitcoin is at 60,000. You may feel like, okay, I've missed an opportunity here. Well, the reality is the circumstances in that make Bitcoin, and other currencies special is that you've got essentially, an ongoing debasement of your currencies, and so how do you think about that risk inside of all of your clients' portfolios and solving on those puzzles and those unique client needs. And so it's still early. We have 10-year track record of debasement. I'm sure that that's not going to break anytime soon. That's a track record that's well established, I would say, Mark. But that being said, if you're looking for some help, there are people out there that are interested in being a thought partner with you, to figure out what is the right way to approach this. And it might be an ETF, and it might be, a Lyons CoinDesk large cap, index approach, or it might be something a little bit different, like multi-institutional custody, multi-jurisdictional custody that Onramp brings to the table, to differentiate how you add value to your client experience. But we're delighted to have you both, Corey and Sonder. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing a little bit about your journey. And we'd love to have you back. I know Mark said there's some other things that he's wanting to pick your brain and dial in. So maybe there's a chance down the road that we can all reconnect and have a deeper conversation that adds value to our community.
Thanks for having us. Thanks so much.
Definitely. Thank you. Appreciate
You bet, gents. Enjoy the rest of August.
Right on.
You too.
Take care. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the show. If you found the information valuable, please share the episode with a friend or leave a rating on your favorite podcast app. All the links we discussed in today's show will be in the show notes inside your podcast app. Before we finish, a quick reminder that Onramp Media is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and nothing should be construed as investment or legal advice. Regardless of where you are on your Bitcoin journey, we'd love to hear from you. Visit onrampbitcoin.com/contact to schedule a consultation with one of our private client advisors.